أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا بالقاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهر المعصومين واللعنة الدائمة الباقية لأعدائهم من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين. أما بعد، فقد قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه الكريم: إنا أنزلناه في ليلة القدر. صلوات عليك. Last night, keeping in mind that it was Laylatul Qadr, I decided to talk about the Quran, specifically about the issue of what is the source of the Quran. Because sometimes we get this whole different views, especially from the Christian missionaries or the atheists. And so we looked at one example last night where we picked an important historical event, and we saw that when it comes to the Bible, it doesn't talk about what will happen to the body of Pharaoh. It talks about Pharaoh and his army, perishing in that when the sea comes back, when the water comes back. But Quran talks about Allah's statement that Allah is going to preserve his body so that it will be as an ayat and a warning for the people to come in future. And we saw that this is not in the Bible. It wasn't known to the Arabs, and it's only about in the last 2 centuries that his body was executed. In Egypt they found. And so that's one of the signs that we see that Quran is not based on human source, it is from the divine source. Tonight I would like to just continue that theme, and this is more about the scientific point of view. But before that, let us just go through the So we began by saying that the Quran is the revelation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and that the Prophet had not seen anyone as his teacher, and especially if you look at the first ayat of Surah An-Najm, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَالنَّجْمِ إِذَا هَوَى مَا ضَلَّ صَاحِبُكُمْ وَمَا غَوَى وَمَا يَنْطِقُ عَنِ الْهَوَى إِنْ هُوَ إِلَّا وَحْيٌ يُوحَى. That I swear by the star when it sets, your companion, referring to the Prophet, has neither gone astray nor has he erred. He does not speak out of his own desire. It is nothing but a revelation that is revealed. So whatever he says is inspired by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And one of the examples I would like to share here is very interesting actually, and it's from Toronto. The research which was done that Quran is based on divine origin, and it's not based on human knowledge. And that is about the gradual development of human in mother's womb. Quran talks about the creation as well as the birth of the child and what happens in between in somewhat details. The gradual stage that it talks about. And in early 80s, there was a professor who has now passed away, Professor Keith Moore, who was professor in the Department of Anatomy at the University of Toronto. He was also the chair of the Anatomy Department till 1984. and he was president of the American Association of Clinical Anatomists till 1991. So we are talking about a non-Muslim scientist based in Toronto at U of T. It's interesting that he was approached by some of the Saudi scholars from the university in Jeddah that we will give you the literal translation of the ayat of Quran about embryology, because he was expert in that. And we would like you to explain this ayat to us from the scientific point of view. So he didn't know Arabic, so they gave him the ayat as well as some ahadith, of course, from their own sources that they consider them to be authentic. And his result is very interesting. He then published in 1982 an article which the title was Highlights of Human Embryology in the Quran and Hadith. This is a Christian scientist. The paper that he presented there, and this is the article is based on that, where he says, almost a year ago, in 1981, I was consulted about the meaning of certain verses in the Quran and some sayings in the Hadith which refer to human reproduction and embryological development. He writes there that I was amazed at the scientific accuracy of these statements which were made in the 7th century AD. And then, the ayat that he has given to him, I'll just, go through one or two of those. One is this ayat where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the process of creation. First, the ayat before this is the one Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, I created the human being from earth. And this refers to the creation of Adam alayhi salam. But then, so we are from Adam. Adam was from Turab. But after Adam, the process was something else. This is where, men and women become part of that process. And so here, then he says, وَيَخْلُقُكُمْ فِي بُطُونِ أُمَّهَاتِكُمْ, that he created you in the wombs of your mothers, خَلْقًا مِّن بَعْدَ خَلْقٍ. You went from one form of creation in the womb to another, gradually changing. And so that's one point of the gradual change in the, embryo and, fetus becoming later on. He was intrigued by these words, فِي ظُلَمَاتٍ ثَلَاثَةٍ. He says the child is developing in 3 layers of darkness. He writes that the staging of human embryos was not proposed until the 1940s. Scientists didn't know details about how the embryo gradually goes from one stage to another. And the stages used nowadays were not adopted worldwide until a few years ago. Now, the term في ظلمات ثلاث, I've simplified it. He has used scientific terms, but basically what it refers to is the belly of the mother and the womb itself, and then the water bag. So there are 3 dhulamat covering the embryo. And he says these are the important elements to protect the development of a child. What intrigued him more was actually this ayat from Surah number 23, ayat 14. There is an ayat before it also. But this is where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then talks about the process, going from one level to another. I can't go into details here, But let me just, talk about this first sentence. ثُمَّ خَلَقْنَا النُّطْفَةَ عَلَقَةً. Where Allah says, we created the nutfa, made it into alaqa. That is in the normal translation you will see is clot. فَخَلَقْنَا الْعَلَقَ مُضْغَةً. And then we changed it gradually into a meat which has been chewed. فَخَلَقْنَا الْمُضْغَ عِظَامًا. And then we changed it gradually into bones. فَسَكَوْنَا الْعِظَامَ لَحْمًا. And then we put, the skin on the bones. ثُمَّ أَنشَأْنَاهَا. And then in a way, Allah says, then we made him into another creation. Means after that initial changes, then a full body is now there. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, then we made him into another creation. فَتَبَارَكَ اللَّهُ أَحْسَنَ الْخَالِقِينَ. Blessed is Allah who is the best of the creators. Now, it's interesting that normally when we do the translation, that, when Allah says we made the sperm into a clot, the word alaqa. Now, Dr. Keith Moore was given words of the each word of the ayat and all different meanings of it. That he, from his scientific point of view, he would choose one. He chooses alaqa not as a clot. He says, because one of the meanings of the alaqa is also used for leech. You know what is leech? That insect which sits and sucks the blood. And it was interesting, when I looked at it first time, reading his article, why would he do this? But he was looking at it from the scientific point of view. He says, this is an appropriate description of the human embryo from day 7 to 24, because it clinges to the lining of the uterus. So it's like the leech, clinging to the, whatever it is, the human body to suck the blood in that way. And he says, as there were no microscopes or lenses available in the 7th century, doctors would not have known that the human embryo had this leech-like appearance when the embryo is between 7 to 24 days. He actually compares the pictures. See here. This is from his article there. The image on the top is the drawing of a leech. And the image below that is a drawing of a 20-day-old human embryo. And he says, look at the similarity. And so he takes that word alaqa in that meaning, because he has that, scientific understanding about it. And then coming to the end of the ayat, ثُمَّ أَنشَأْنَاهُ خَلْقًا آخَرَ فَتَبَارَكَ اللَّهُ أَحْسَنُ الْخَالِقِينَ. That after the basic, components are complete, and then you have, in a way, after 4 months, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala breathed in the soul, this is where Allah says, now this is a different creation from the very beginning, compared to the beginning stages. فَتَبَارَكَ اللَّهُ أَحْسَنُ الْخَالِقِينَ. The way Dr. Moore, as an embryologist, explains, he says, this implies that the bones and the muscles result in the formation of another creature. This may refer to human-like embryo that forms by the end of the eighth week. At this stage, it has distinctive human characteristics and possesses the primordia of all the internal and external organs and parts. And therefore Allah says, أنشأناه خلقا آخر. Now I have made him into, in a way, complete, human being physically. Then he remarks here, he says, the agreement between the leg or the gap in development mentioned in the Quran and the slow rate of change occurring during the second and the third weeks is amazing. These details of human development were not described until about 40 years ago. And so, it's interesting to read the entire article, but we don't want to go into the details here. Look at his final conclusion about the Quran in that way, from his point of view. And he was not a Muslim. He actually made a presentation about his finding about this ayat of Quran and the hadith, which were given to him in a conference in Cairo. And there he says something very interesting, very relevant to our theme here. He says, it has been a great pleasure for me to help clarify statements in the Quran about human development. He is basically taking pride that I was able to help Muslims to understand the Quran better from my expertise. And then, this is really powerful for us. It is clear to me that these statements must have come to Muhammad from God or Allah, because most of this knowledge was not discovered until many centuries later. This proves to me that Muhammad must have been a messenger of God or Allah. And so he believes that this is the divine revelation. This is not a product of a human being. And this is where, of course, he has been asked in some of the videos I have seen later on, that he was asked, are you a Muslim or not? He said, well, I was brought up as a Christian, and my father was a priest, and the way he, brought me up, that there are different ways of worshiping God. And so I believe in this in that way, but I am still on my path. And so he didn't convert, but I think this statement is very powerful, that from his scientific point of view, as an expert in that area, when he looks at those ayat of Quran and the relevant ahadith given to him, he says that, this must have come to Muhammad from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Salawat. So this is Dr. Keith Moore of the University of Toronto. But let me give you another testimony on the same issue of his research by another Canadian professor from the University of Manitoba, where he, Dr. Prasad, from Indian background, was professor of anatomy as well as the Department of Pediatrics and Child Health at the University of Manitoba. And he, talks about it based on the research done by Dr. Moore. He says, we are talking about 1400 years ago. And of course, the Sunni perspective that, the Prophet was illiterate, so this is what he is. You have some illiterate person making profound statements that are amazingly accurate of scientific nature. I personally can't see how this could be mere chance. There are too many accuracies. And like Dr. Moore, I have no difficulty in mind reconciling that this is divine inspiration or revelation which led him to these statements. And so this is our own time, actually our own country. We had two, experts in their own field who studied the ayat of Quran, and both of them basically come to this conclusion that this cannot be as a result of human knowledge. This is based on the revelation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is where, we have to realize that, sometimes we need outsiders to tell us what is haqq and what is the truth. I wish, Muslims themselves, Muslim scientists would have studied these ayat even long before Dr. Professor Keith Moore. And this is where we see, going back to the last will of Amir al-Mu'mineen, Ali bin Abi Talib alayhi salatu wasalam, in which he, addresses his own family as well as us, because right in the beginning he dictated those words, and he says, "This is for my sons Hassan and Hussein, and for my family, and this is for the Shias to whom this will would reach." And it is part of the statements which are there in Nahj al-Balagha. And there, Amir al-Mu'mineen talks about some important issues. One, he says, Allah, Allah fil Quran, that I urge you and I warn you, keep Allah in your mind regarding the Quran. And then he says something very profound. لا يسبقكم به غيركم. He says it shouldn't be that others reach to the Quran before you. Not in a sense of reading, reflecting and thinking deeply about it and implementing in our life. And so that is also the message that we have from Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali bin Abi Talib alayhi salatu wassalam. Salawat. And so we have to keep this in mind that, when we talk about the Quran, you will get many, as I said, statements in the social media trying to say that, oh, there was a doctor who lived in Medina, or so-and-so was part of the Banu Hashim, and it must have been that the Prophet would sit down with them and learn all these things. And so, mashallah, he is now has access to those who have the eloquence and, clarity of the language. So he's speaking that from them. And then now you have scientists, he's sitting there, learning medical issues to insert that in his, invention. So then we'll have to find somebody else who was an expert in astronomy, because Quran has quite a lot about it, So, and we see that history doesn't support this kind of assumption. Even if there was, let's say, a doctor or a scientist in Medina, that doesn't mean that, or in Mecca, that the Prophet, used to go and sit down and learn from that person. And this is where we have to realize that those who are close to the Prophet, even his enemies, never ever said that, oh, I know he used to go and learn these issues from so-and-so. They did all this propaganda against him. Basically, three strategies they adapted. Number one, initially when they started hearing the ayat of Quran, they said that he is sha'ir, he is poet. But the problem was that the people of Mecca were expert in poetry. They knew the difference between poetry and the ayat that the Prophet was presenting. So that label didn't work. So they went back to their, drawing board and to see what other label they can use. Then they said, okay, look at the impact of, if you go to him and he starts reciting the ayat of Quran, you become so mesmerized, you become bewitched. So it means that he's a sorcerer, sahir. So sha'ir didn't work, so they started saying he is sahir. To the extent that, there was a house of Zayd bin Arqam, one of the early Muslims, where the Muslims would gather and even the Prophet would go there and they would recite the Quran. The people were told, don't even pass by their alley, or if you go there, close your ears when you are passing by. Otherwise, if you hear the words, you will be bewitched. But even that didn't work. So then they come up with a third level and they say, okay, he is not sha'ir, he is not sahir, he is majnoon. Means he has been possessed by the jinn, he is lunatic. But when people would go and sit down with him, they would realize there is no junoon there. He's a very intelligent person, very normal conversation. And so all these levels were there. But we don't see ever, mushrikeen would say that, oh, he has learned this from so-and-so. And so this old, propaganda that we see these days in the social media, especially by anti-Muslim groups, just be firm in your faith and keep yourself close to the Quran. As long as you are attached to the Quran, you will be attached to the Ahlul Bayt also, inshallah. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين.